Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 25 of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We're a group of 5 diverse friends who offer our individual takes on the latest and greatest board games to hit our table. Our focus here at the Fifth Meeple are games you can play at a 5-player count or higher, but for clarity, we need to play those games at 4 sometimes to make sure we know what the board gaming community is playing and make sure we get the best games out on the table and to battle each other. I'm your host, Daniela, the Goofy Noob, and I'm joined today by the Collector.
Hey, this is David.
The Intellectual Introvert.
Hi, everyone. This is Chris.
And the Deluxeifier.
Hello, it's Pete.
We also have another compadre, Dave, who we play with weekly that makes up our 5 in the Fifth Meeple. However, he chooses not to be on this podcast, but we still value and use his insights and scoring in almost every recording, especially when it comes to the Battle of the Funnest. Let's get to it. In today's episode, we explore 2 games that place multi-use cards at the center of their gameplay. First, we'll head off to Belgium, thwarting threats, constructing canals, and gating guilders galore in the bustling burg of Bruges. Then it's off to ancient Rome, where we seek to save Nero's neck in the wake of a fierce fire, doing our best to restore glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
And last but not least, we'll put the games to use, pitting them against each other in our ultimate showdown, the Battle of the Funnest. Now, before we deal this duplicitous deck, David, what's our topic of discussion for today?
Yes, our topic for today, just to get our listeners to know us better, is what is the hottest game mechanic that you're all about right now?
I don't know if it's hot this summer, but one thing that always speaks to me is dice drafting. I think card drafting to a lesser extent, but something about dice drafting. Pete introduced me to Grand Austria Hotel. You get to draft the heck out of dice in there. It's at the center of it. And there's just something about that. I find that fun. And a nice little puzzle in there, but a little bit different than what maybe a lot of the other games offer.
Yeah, my probably favorite mechanisms are worker placement and deck building. Those really are in my wheelhouse. Most of my games that I really enjoy and rate pretty high are in this category. So that's kind of where I'm at with my style of play and the games that I really enjoy. But I do like playing other games as well.
I'm big into right now tile placement and the pattern building. So I really like when we get either a tableau in front of us or there's something that we have to build out and fit these little pieces, components together, whether it's Foundations of Rome, whether it's Isle of Cats, Planet Unknown, Castles of Mad King Ludwig. I really enjoy that little puzzle within the puzzle of trying to make sure you can get the most out of the pieces you get.
Polyomino, I'm a big fan of myself, pretty much from the time I started. I enjoy that in any game. And I guess I'll just throw my last one before we ask you, David, what's up to you. Round end bonuses, it's really, really basic, but it's just, hey, you've got multiple rounds going together and being able to look at, okay, what am I trying to do now? And then you got to shift. And then it's the next thing, and you can plan ahead and see what you're building towards. I really enjoy that puzzle within a game as well.
Yeah, that's really good, Chris. That's probably not one of mine, but yeah, I know you do really well at that, so that's great. You know, mine right now, I would say my hot take on it is that I really do like multi-use card games. We're going to talk about a couple tonight, but I like the fact that, you know, you could use a card for totally different kind of purposes. Everybody has kind of the same cards, but how do you utilize them? And I'm also really intrigued by games that are in smaller boxes, so smaller footprints. So utilizing cards instead of necessarily always a board is something that kind of intrigues me as well. So can we shrink down that footprint so I can bring more games on vacation?
Love it.
Nice.
Thanks, David. Guys, if we want to keep our reputation on track, we should probably take a short break and then hit the streets of Bruges.
Bruges is a dice-rolling hand management game where you employ multi-use cards to build your city, recruit people to live there, enhance your reputation, and fend off threats in 15th century Belgium. It plays 2 to 4 players or 5 with a pretty solid expansion. At the start of each round, players refresh their 5-card hand by drawing from one of 2 draw piles, the backs of which indicate a color, which comes into play later in multiple ways. 5 different colored dice are then rolled. Low numbers determine how much money must be spent to increase reputation, while higher numbers determine which threats each player must take. When enough threats of a certain type are collected, players are penalized, losing resources, money, or points. Players then take turns playing 1 card at a time from their hand until each player has played 4 cards. When you play a card, you can use it in multiple ways. You can discard it and either take 2 workers of the matching color, take money equal to the value shown on the matching colored die, discard 1 threat marker of the matching color, or pay money to extend your canal if, once again, the color matches. Alternatively, you can discard a worker of the matching color to place the card in your city as a house, or pay the cost to recruit the person shown on the card to reside in one of your established houses. These recruits give you benefits that could be single use, immediately or at the game's end, ongoing, or once per round when activated by a worker. The game ends in the round where one of the 2 draw piles is depleted. Players score points from the people they recruited, majority markers, which are earned at the end of each round, canals that they built, and from their position on the reputation track. The player with the most points wins the game and becomes the brazen boss of the brilliant burg of Bruges. Bruges was designed by Stefan Feld and was first published in 2013 by Hans im Kluk.
Welcome to Bruges, guys. We've got plenty of workers roaming the streets looking for a job. There are houses of many colors lining the streets and maybe an occasional flood or a fire. With everything Bruges has to offer, what keeps your boat afloat in the canals in this game? What are we liking in this game?
David talked earlier about multi-use cards when we were talking at the beginning of this episode. I think the fact that every card can literally do everything keeps the decision space manageable. So a lot of multi-use cards may have multiple uses, but it's different things that those cards can use, and we'll get to that in Glory to Rome. In here, it's based on the color, but you can still do all the same things. And so I think that makes it's a relatively simple concept, and again, different colors on each one, but it gives you a lot of freedom without being too complicated.
Yeah, I think there's a good amount of randomness in the game, too. It's not overwhelming where you're really thrown off. You know, rolling those dice to actually kind of determine what costs are for particular items, that's really done well. Each round that changes. I really like when games, mix it up, and you do have to pivot a little bit. You might not have the exact card that you want, but it's really not overwhelming where, you're just all messed up because something didn't turn out your way.
Yeah, I think this game, I feel like it gives you a lot of agency. So every card, you have to make that choice of one of those 5 actions. And normally, there's a couple choices in there always that are battling against each other to which one is actually the better path. And sometimes you don't even know if that is the better path. So I like the agency it gives you. You're not really locked into a certain thing. Chris was talking earlier about dice placement games. Sometimes you're kind of locked in based off what the roll is. There's modifiers there, but this kind of is more open-ended, and I kind of like that.
Yeah, I think for the multi-use cards, this is probably one of the first couple of games I've played that has those types of cards with a game. So it's a little bit of a new concept for me, and especially with the second game we'll be talking about. But I don't think there was anything like overtly new in this game. It was a couple concepts mixed together, but I really liked the threat level, like the threat management in this as well. I thought it was really cool that it's a little bit of a press your luck because you got like 2 flood tiles, and then you're waiting, and you're like, oh, do I work on getting rid of that? Who has a card to flood me? Who's doing what to me? So it's a little bit of a side quest. I don't know if that's what you want to call it, but it's something else that I really enjoyed about this game.
The artwork is one other thing that I'd like to call out too. It's really beautiful artwork. I think each of the individual people on the cards are different and they have different actions, and you're not always going to see every card in the game when you're playing it. You shuffle up the deck, and we only use, I think it's about 2/3 of the deck, maybe a little bit more. So that's one of the things that also I really enjoy about the game. I'm usually not too crazy about aesthetics, but those cards really are nice. And I know the newer version of Hamburg, that's one of the things I think people talk about, that they're not as nice as the original version.
I usually don't care about art. I wrote the same thing down. but for me, I wrote down that this is a little bit of a me thing, but I look at the people on those cards, and I know it wasn't intended this way, but there's a card, I swear it's Fraser Crane from Cheers on there. And there's another card, it's Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It Anyway? And it's just like, oh, I know they didn't mean to do that, but there's so many cards in that deck, must be the way they're drawn, where you can relate that to people. At least I can. Every time I play a card, like, that's who that is. And that's what I'm playing.
That's funny.
Yeah, that's funny. I mean, to tag along with Daniela, the threat, I do like it because it's kind of like we're all playing against each other, but at the same time, there's a little bit of co-op going on. Are we all going to go down with the ship? I mean, each person's making their individual decision, but you're looking across the board and you're like, if it does flood, does it affect, Chris more or Pete more? Mm-hmm. Do I actually care if it floods? Am I going to actually lose a lot of stuff? I like games like After the Empire, and that kind of just is the same thing where everybody's constantly getting attacked by the AI, or in this case, the dice rolls. Everybody's kind of getting those threat markers thrown at them in that respect. But I kind of like, we're all kind of in that same boat. What are we going to do about it? And some people choose to get hit. Yeah. Other people choose to take a safer route. So.
Yeah, I think it depends on who you're playing with.
Oh, yeah.
Because it could be a totally different game.
Yeah, but I love that you say that, though, because sometimes if I see a threat could come, you have a choice. Do I want to use my card to get rid of that threat, or I just want to, hey, if it's a threat that takes away all my money, I'm just going to spend all my money.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Get my benefit now and just kind of change how you do it, or get rid of all my workers or something like that. The other neat thing about the threats, going back to the multi-use cards, to me, it's always so painful to have to use your card just to get rid of a threat token. It feels like okay, you get a point, big deal. But
especially if you hold on to that.
Yeah, you could do so much with that card.
Oh, yeah.
And then you just use it to just get rid of one of these tokens. It's painful.
Yeah. I like the draw luck too in this game. I like the games where it could be a complete mess for 3 rounds in a row, or it could be fantastic. And you just have to, it's one of these games that when you're pulling the cards and you maybe not getting it, you have to go with it. You can't get mad about it. You just got to play what you play.
Yeah, so what Danielle is talking about, if you're listening, is that there's 2 piles, and you're drawing cards off the top, and you know what color the card is, but you do not know what's on the other side. And so it is frustrating, though, right? Because you're like, I want a blue card, and you draw a brown. And you're like, another brown's behind it, because you don't know what the next color is. And you could draw like 3 or 4. I think, Chris, last time you drew like 4 of the same colors in a row, trying to find maybe a color that you were looking for.
And I had all the animals.
I know. That was a good time.
Yeah. And speaking of the cards, I think something that is brilliant in this game that seems like a small thing, but I think really comes into play is you have a hand of 5 cards, you play 4 each round. And so it just something as simple as, well, I could play 5 or I play 4, what's the big deal? Making that decision of which one you're going to keep. And then once you keep it, you're like invested. I kept this one from last time. I kept it for a reason. And then making that decision, just a little simple thing like that, to me, changes the way you play this game, because you know you're not going to play them all, so it does matter which one you keep or what order you potentially play them in.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you get really frustrated when you have that one card that you've kept now for 7 rounds and you still can't get it out in the game.
Yeah, and then you got to play it to get rid of a threat or something.
I know,
Like,
exactly.
come on. I also feel like the game moves pretty fast. Once you get the gist of it, which I don't think takes that long, because it's relatively simple to wrap your head around the rules, at least, maybe not how to apply them. But, I mean, a 5-player game obviously takes longer than a 2-player game. But when we played this with 5 players, which we'll talk about the expansion in a minute, when we played this with 5 players, I thought it was fine because it just comes around to you that much faster. And I actually enjoyed the more players we had around there, the more things were going on. I enjoyed a game much more with more players. We played 2, David, at Origins. You whomped me on that one. But even so, I felt like when we played with more players, it was much more fun.
Yeah, I think this is a game, too, that at a higher player count, there's more of that interaction. There's more going on. I agree with you. It's good stuff.
And I think the cards help that, when all the cards pretty much have the same action on that. You kind of know what you're going to do on that card, even though it may be a little bit different. I think that really helped the flow of the game.
No, I agree. Because, again, there's a lot of things you can do with that card, but it's the same thing. It's just a matter of how am I going to use this one.
Yeah. All right. I also think the expansion for me was much more enjoyable when we added this to the game. I thought we all essentially doubled our scores, which is always fun to do. I was looking past at the points that we gained. I think everybody pretty much doubled their scores and got a lot more points. But I think it opened up the play a little bit, and I'm interested to know what you guys thought of the expansion.
So there's 2 expansions. There's the City on the Zwin, which I think is the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
And then there's a pet expansion, which is separate. So to me, yes, I very much enjoyed that City on the Zwin expansion, where every round you've got the market where if you're the first one to take a certain action, you get a special benefit. That changes things, what you might want to do. And then you have the docks where, depending on where you roll a 3 and a 4, which in the regular game doesn't mean anything, now all of a sudden, hey, if you're building on a canal, you get this other special ability if you're building on the right color that matches those boats. And those 2 things, to me, the canals are kind of a trap sometimes, and you think you're doing yourself good and you're really keeping yourself from doing other things. When you put that expansion there, all of a sudden the canals are very, very powerful and very much at the center.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
And I think that helped the majorities tokens, too, in the expansion to stay, most canals or most pets or whatever we're working on. I thought that was a benefit to that.
Yeah, the expansion, I feel like, definitely opens up the game. It's not as tight. I do like it. It also has the 5th player, which Dave could play with us, which is always great. So, yeah, it's really hard to find, but we'll talk about that later.
All right. Anything about Bruges that makes you feel like you're at the center of a rat-infested plague? I will start because
Do you mean dislikes?
dislikes or things that frustrated you while we played. For me, one is the card holder. The card holder that held the 2 decks, it was a little bit like I could see what the next color was going to be when I was pulling out. So I could generally kind of a little bit, not manipulate it like too much, right? You're manipulating between 2 different decks, which isn't very many, but I could see kind of what the next card was, and it was just a little flimsy and kind of like caught on some of the other cards below it. That was a beef I had.
And even if you're not trying, you're going to see it. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You're like, well, okay, I know that yellow card that I need is 2 cards deep, right? So of course I'm going to pick from there. So
Well, in our last podcast, I know David talked a little bit about one of his flings, and it was Bruges. And I did bring this up that was kind of one of my sticking points too. I did look, and I think one of the solutions to this is instead of having those cards turned so they're facing out, that you actually flip them the other way. So when you peel them back, you're only seeing the bottom of the card. I don't think you'll see the color as much as you would when you're peeling the cards off the top of the deck.
So turn the holder, you're saying.
Not necessarily the holder, but put the cards in almost upside down. So the tops are facing the outside. So when you go to peel them off, you don't see that color because most of that color is up at the very tippy top of the card.
And then making sure the entire deck is aligned so that the top of every card is the top of
Seems
every
like
card.
a lot of work.
Yeah.
That's just us.
Yeah, that's the same dislike that I had with it, with your comment there.
This game tends to be sometimes you do get just draws of bad luck, just like you would any other game. And sometimes you can be in this game and just not get the cards you're looking for. You see other people's engines go, and the cards that you have, they just don't go together at all. And so that is kind of a frustrating point, but the game plays fast, so take it for what it is. But yeah.
And adjacent to that, I'm curious of the opinions of other folks here, because that one thing is getting cards that pair up to each other. I also feel like there's a couple of cards that, if you get them at the right time, can be really, really powerful. Pete, one game we played, you got a card that gave you a $3 discount early. I got that in a future game early, and it was powerful.
Yeah,
it allowed you to do a whole lot and really get things down that you otherwise wouldn't be able to do, and that adds up a lot over time. And there's a couple other cards like that. I think, Daniela, you had a card really early that every time you took some action,
I
that you
moved
could
up
take
on
every
the-
time. You got a point. Yeah. So
Yeah.
really powerful, and there's nothing about playing well to do. It's, I got that card.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I did think, though, that those cards made me want to only do certain actions, though. So it kind of kept me in a box a little bit, but it was okay because I was moving up on the victory track.
Yeah, I haven't won at the game, so again, I don't have a whole lot to say about winning or great strategies on that. I think though with those multiplayer cards or not multi-purpose cards, that there are those traps that you can fall into. Yes, if you get a good card early on, I know a lot of those cards are real expensive, and you try to drop them down, and so there's that balance between how much money am I going to pay versus that risk reward factor. So again, I think this is a game where somebody who's played it more times is probably going to do better than somebody who hasn't. And not that that's a bad thing, but I think it's just an observation that I would come away with it. I don't know what your guys' thoughts are.
See, Pete, on that front, I think I've gotten worse at this game just because I know what cards are in the deck, so I'm looking for certain cards to come out, and then when they don't come out, I get more frustrated because I'm like, I know there's at least 4 copies of that, but it never shows up. So I build a strategy around a card that I'm kind of chancing on, but yeah, I think I'm regressing.
Isn't that a fling anymore?
I don't know. We'll see.
I've got a potentially unpopular opinion. We talked about the Pets expansion. I think the official name, I'm going to mispronounce this, the Haustier expansion. That's the Pets expansion. The first time we played it, I thought it was fun. I'm an animal guy. I love the idea of pets. That was cute. And after that, I just like, whatever. To me, it's all about when does that card come up? That's who gets the pets. Once they get 1 or 2 pets, you're never going to catch them. And it just becomes more frustrating to me that I can never get a pet. And again, that may not be the case for everybody else. I just like, I could do without the Pets expansion at this point.
Yeah, I think that only furthered the one point that you could get when it was the majorities token. So, but it was only 4 of those tokens, correct?
Yeah, and I feel though with the majority tokens and most of them, if you get to a head start early, it is very hard to overtake somebody else on those tracks.
Yeah, I will say, I don't know what you guys feel about this, but I almost would think that if somebody else caught up to you, maybe they should take the majorities token because you're really no longer the lead. Someone caught up to you. And then, but I don't know if that really makes sense in the grand scheme of things. But I almost feel like, well, someone else caught up to you. You're not the majority anymore. You just got there first. I don't know.
Almost like Dune.
I think they should have to pay more money and say, hey, if you're willing to pay like 3 coins or something and you're tied
to keep this.
There is a card that breaks tiebreakers because Chris seems to find it now.
I did have that card. Yes, that was a nice card to have. Yeah. What do you guys think about player interaction? I felt like there was very little here. There's a couple cards. I had a card one time where I could give you guys a red threat marker every round and things like that. But other than that, I at least didn't feel like there was a whole lot of player interaction going on. And when it was negative if there wasn't.
Yeah, I didn't like that card that you had.
I think it's how you play it. I think if we all came into the game going, time to die, that's a different game that you're playing than I'm not going to use my flood tile because I'm going to be nice. I think you could play it mean
but
or not.
even the ability to be mean, I have only seen that. I've only had that card one time in all the times we played where I could actually impact other players. I had one card where every time you did something, I got a couple coins. And I had one card one time where, okay, everybody, take a red threat marker. Other than that, I just feel like there's nothing I can do to impact you other than, I'll take this red card so that he doesn't get it or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the threat markers. Maybe it's just because I get walloped on them, and I don't want to spend that card to kind of disrupt them. It seems to take me off of, take my eyes off of the prize, and
but you're getting a benefit.
I'm just not a big fan of it, but I get why it's in the game. I mean, that is that interaction that we're looking for, because I think you're right. Other than that, there's really not a lot of interaction.
Yeah, and this game, I think, could tend to have a problem with like a runaway leader, because if somebody gets the right cards early, like you guys were talking about, I've tended to see some of the scores. Either it's a close game, but a lot of games, the first and second place isn't that close. I mean, There might be like 3 or 4 players at the tail end that are close together, but a lot of times that player who wins, they're out there by a good 20 or 30 points normally.
Yeah, I think we see that in most of our games where the winner definitely won.
Yeah, like
Definitely
Chris, you walloped us 105. Next closest was 90. The one game, the last game was close though. Those were all within the 40s, 50s.
Probably except for mine.
No, you were not playing with us, so yeah, you were 0.
The only other things I have, these are nitpicks. I know they are, but I'll call them out anyway. The scoring tokens, the tokens we use to mark where a score is, those are huge. Every score space can only handle 1. I don't know why they made those so big. When you get 3 people that have 11 points, they're sitting off the.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird design decision. And then the last thing, I love that city's expansion. The boats are hard to tell apart as far as their color. If you're maybe even if you're sitting right next to it. I wasn't. I had to keep asking. Okay, what color is that? So I know what we're doing.
Yeah, one person I managed them solely because it was on my side of the board, and I would just try and call out the color that was it before each round began. All right, guys, let's head to the collector's corner. David, is Bruges worth giving up to our guilds?
Yeah, so Bruges is a collector's person's dream. You know, both of these games that we'll be talking about today, they are very collectible. Like right now, if you go on to Board Game Geek or you go on Amazon, you can't find either of the games we're going to talk about tonight on Amazon or anything like that. So you're going to have to buy them normally on a secondhand market. So we're talking Board Game Geek or we're talking eBay a lot of times, or you could do Noble Games. But on these sites, you know, right now I see Bruges is going anywhere between 85 used, and that's if you get really lucky. I haven't seen many, but normally you're going to pay somewhere between 120 to 170 bucks on most of these platforms for this game. And that doesn't include the expansions. You know, you can find the pet expansion kind of new. It's coming over from England. You can find it for about 15 to 20 bucks US dollars. But the 5th player expansion, which is the City of Zwick, which we really like, right now you can't even find a copy to buy that I checked it within the last week. There's no available US copies actually out there in the marketplace. So if you can find this out there, I know I had to wait a little bit for my copy, but you're going to pay somewhere between 100, 120 bucks just for the expansion to play 5 players. Definitely collectible. It's definitely holding its value. You know, the other game we talked about, they made, I think Pete mentioned it earlier, was Hamburg. And Hamburg is a reimplementation of Bruges, but even that you can find on Amazon right now. It's going for $105. So it's still expensive.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, is that just because it was released over in Europe and not here?
I don't know.
Okay,
I mean, it
fine,
came out in 2013, so it's been around for 10 years.
Yeah, okay.
But it's still highly sought after.
Well, the Hamburg expansion I know was a Kickstarter. I was actually on that Kickstarter, and I actually backed out of it just because it was taking forever for it to come. And it was one of they had like a 5-set series that you could order. Feld's redoing a lot or re-implementing a lot of their games because they are out of print. And I did know that they had some original artwork on the boards, which I liked, which was more like the original. And then they changed it up, and it just, in my personal opinion, I didn't like the board anymore. I'm like, I don't know that I even want to try to go with this. So
Aren't
that's why
the Feld re-implementations, though, all like pretty steeply priced even at the starting point?
They are. I mean, when I was backing them on Kickstarter, it was 125 plus. And again, that's what they're going for.
Yeah.
Even now in the secondhand, not even secondhand market, firsthand market, you try to go to any of the stores to buy them, and it's going to be over $100 for them.
Are they rewriting the rules? Are they fixing things, or is it just a re-implementation? Like Bruges is just Hamburg. It's just a
Hamburg was
They
different.
made some changes to the game. I do know that the expansions are in it, but they did streamline a couple things.
Okay.
I think they added a couple components to make it a little bit smoother game. But again, I haven't played it yet, so I really can't say too much about it.
All right, guys, let's hit our last comments on Bruges before we drain the canals. David, as a collector, you have this in your collection. You're not trying to get rid of it. It's going to sit there. It's been on your summer flings. You're liking it right now.
Yeah, this was a game that, I sought after. It's probably the first Stefan Feld game that I actually have all the different kind of versions and expansions with, and it got me on a Feld kick, so I think I bought like 10 other Feld games after I played this one. So I've been definitely exploring a lot of his games, seeing what they're about. But yeah, this kind of got me into that. So if you don't want to take drugs, then you probably shouldn't buy this game because it can lead you down a bad rabbit hole of expensive games.
Addiction.
Exactly.
As the Deluxeifier, Pete, what are you thinking? Just final thoughts, or if there's anything in this game you would Deluxeify or not?
The first thing that I would do, just because of the expense of the game, would be to sleeve up the cards, because that's the first thing that's really going to get a lot of wear on it. I do know, I think did you have the metal coins as well?
We played with metal.
Or
We
played with
metal
some,
coins, and I actually did sleeve this game, which I don't sleeve most games.
which I think is good. I mean, when you're talking about a game that's that expensive and that hard to find, it's not like it's in print that you can just go out and buy another copy. So that would be the main thing that I would do. You could use other coins. I think you have some kind of coins.
Yeah,
but
we had some kind of coins.
Yeah, I don't think they're directly related, but get that. That's always helps in a game.
Okay.
I did some 3D printing as well of the boats, which I just felt after playing it needed something to make it more clear what color that boat actually was. And so that was just out on Thingiverse. There was something out there really quick to print, and that's going to make it much easier to tell, okay, what's actually sitting over there.
But Chris, final thoughts. What are you thinking of Bruges?
I liked Bruges. I didn't love it. At $120, I'm not taking a flight to Bruges anytime soon. I thought it was good. I thought it was interesting. Took me a little while to wrap my head around it. The first couple games we played, I was like, I can't get anything going. And then the second couple games, like, okay, now I got it going, right? And things were going well. And now I feel like, okay, I've seen it. I'm ready to move on.
Okay. All right. I think for someone, if you're coming into this game new, from my point of view, the multi-use cards is a little bit of a newer item for this type of for a game. So if you're into multi-use cards, you understand that concept. You're able to take a card, understand it, and learn everything that the card could do. If that's your forte, I would say try this game. Everything else is quite straightforward in it. If that's not your forte, you got a hard time just kind of focusing and reading everything on a card, you might want to skip this one for now.
I do think, and again, you're the new person telling me, I feel like if you're going to play a multi-use card game, this is probably one of the easier implementations of that. Because again, regardless of what card it is, they all work the same way.
Compared to our next one, 100 times. Well, guys, it's starting to feel like a raid is about to happen here. So let's take a short break and put on our togas. Then we'll do our best to bring glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome is a 2 to 5 player card-based city-building game set in ancient Rome. As one of Nero's trusted advisors, you are responsible for rebuilding Rome's infrastructure after a great fire destroyed much of the formerly glorious city. The main deck is comprised of 6 different types of multi-use cards, each of which has 3 characteristics. The first characteristic is a structure, a statue or an aqueduct, for example, and it represents a type of building that can be built during the game to earn influence and gain special powers. The second characteristic is a type of material, such as concrete or wood, that can be used to build those structures. The third characteristic is a role, like architect or merchant, that allows you to take specific actions to manipulate the placement of cards during the game. There are also a limited number of jacks available, which can be used in place of any role. On your turn, you choose a card from your hand to play for its role, each of which allows you to take a specific action. Laborer and legionary cards allow you to take materials from a general pool or your neighbors and place them into your stockpile. Architects and craftsmen allow you to start constructing a new building or to add materials from your hand or your stockpile to a partially built structure. Patrons allow you to move clients from the general pool into your clientele base, which strengthens that ability for you in the future, and the merchant moves materials from your stockpile to your vault. After announcing your card, remaining players have the choice of following your lead, playing a matching card from their hand to also reap the benefit, or to simply think, adding another card to their hand for future use. Used cards go into the general pool and become available in future rounds. The game ends when all of the available foundations are consumed, the card deck is completed, or a building is constructed that triggers the end game. Players gain points from the influence and bonuses granted by their constructed buildings, the value of cards in their vault, and by having the most of a particular type of material in their vault. The player with the most points wins the game and avoids the gladiators for at least one more day. Glory to Rome was designed by Carl Chudyk and Ed Carter and was first published in 2005 by Cambridge Games Factory.
As in previous episodes, we find ourselves back in Rome, but this time it's a disaster area and we need to help with the recovery. What do you think it is about this game that really puts the glory into Glory to Rome?
Glory to Rome.
Thanks, Chris. Exactly my thoughts, guys.
No, I got plenty.
I got plenty too, but okay. So, for me, this is a multi-use card game, kind of one of the original ones that actually came out. There's a lot of lore behind this game about with the designers and why it's out of print, and we're going to talk about later how expensive this game actually is, if you can even find copies of this game. But, to me, what really excites me about this game is that I think it's a multi-use card game, but it's very complicated. You're not going to get it the first couple times you play it, but as you keep playing, it's like an onion. The more you play it, the more the layers peel back, and the more you see how much strategy is actually in this game. Because when you play this game, I think a lot of times you think about the actions that you're doing, but I think the more you play this game, it's really about what cards you're putting in the pool. And, somebody who loves to play gin rummy, and I played it, for years with my dad growing up, and it was a really tough game because he would play me really hard, but you control the discards. It wasn't about necessarily what was in your hand. It was about what you're discarding out to the pool. And this game, if you can't wrap your head around that, you're always going to struggle with this game because a lot of times it's not necessarily what you play, but it's what you're putting in there, letting other people take out. And that is kind of the crux of this game. At least the more I play it, the more I see it that way. So, but yeah, it's very different than just the game that we just played previously. I would not bring an inexperienced player to this game.
I.e. me, who they brought to the table.
Onions taste the same on the outside as they do on the inside, so getting to the inside of it isn't going to make this any better, at least for me. The best thing about the game that I could say is the player board, because that's the only thing I'm looking at, because as well as Chris said, all these functions that they do, you get these cards in front of you, and it doesn't click for me. I don't know if I'm the only one,
No.
But I just struggle with that. I know the first game I was just trying to figure out how can I put myself out of misery and end the game. The second game,
Got to build a catacomb.
End the game immediately.
The second game, the second thing that I would say about the game, though, is this can be a very mean game if you like that kind of thing. I also feel like there's a big kingmaker aspect of this game, because I felt really bad on the last game that we played when Chris had, he's getting set up to win the game, and I stole his card and I took his thunder away. And
I love it.
Very frustrating. I know you liked it, but
No, you didn't. It wasn't equal turns.
those are just some of the comments. But I do agree with you that everything is in that card pool, and I think I still don't have a good grip on it. I do know we played, I don't know if it was our own variant where we started throwing a lot of cards in there. It seemed to speed up the game for us. I don't know if that's the proper way to play it or not. I think you
we
saw
played
that
a
on
variant that we saw online, from Heavy Cardboard. So if you watch their variant, they're throwing out cards when you basically complete a building. You're supposed to keep the cards that you use to build the material behind it. The variant that we played, just to see what it was like, is we took those cards and we threw them into the pool instead, which made the game a lot more loose. And it was a totally different game experience, but it did play a lot faster.
Yeah, I think so. I don't disagree with everything that Pete is saying here. I will say, once I finally understood the game, the first game don't even come by me. I am fuming. I am just so irritated. I just could not grasp everything that these cards could do. But you have to understand, this is a fast-paced game. You're supposed to play this fast, in my opinion. This is a win at all costs. This is a hurt your neighbor. This is like a go out and get it. And I think I had known that from the onset, I think I would have played it a little bit differently and been a little bit more cutthroat. Because I do think that there is some take that in this game.
There's a lot of take that.
There's a lot.
And I usually don't like that either, because there's so much of it in the game. I was like, okay, I'm just going to get on the board and just you do what you got to do to win. You talked about onions. I hate onions. Can't stand them. But I love this game. That spoiler alert. I really, really enjoy this game. Maybe I'm alone.
Weird. weird.
We'll find out later. I love the lead and follow mechanic. So you're playing every round, but they're also, okay, am I gonna take advantage now, and then I'm going to have one less card in my hand? Or even when you're leading, you're like, well, I need to do this, but I think maybe Pete's going to do this, so I'm going to do something else, take the better advantage, and hope Pete does it. And so there's a little bit of that betting. I like that whole dynamic. And once you get enough patrons, you don't even have to follow in order to be able to take that action. And so that puzzle of trying to set yourself up to be most effective, regardless of what anybody does, I think is a fun puzzle. I know you guys maybe don't agree with me, but I enjoyed that part of the game among a lot of things.
Well, you and I tied last game, so I really enjoyed the last game we played. Okay. But I think
that was the one where Pete took my card.
That was it. Yeah.
So
the interesting thing about the last game we played, though, was as we were going around playing, I literally had nothing in my hand for rounds on end. I kept having to pick up one, and I was playing it, picking up one and laying it because of how I was playing the game and what I was dealt, and having to save myself at certain points. So I thought that was super interesting. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I had a few rounds, no cards in my hand.
Yeah, because I wanted to attack you with Legionnaire and I couldn't. So you were definitely playing a different game.
Something.
Where you sit in this game at the table can matter as well, because you in the game you can only, when you do that Legionnaire, you're only attacking somebody to the left and the right of you, and that can make a difference in a 5-player game. If those 2 players put up walls against you, and you're pretty much locked out of that action to get extra cards. So just something to think about on that. Is that a good thing? I guess you could say it's a good thing. It's a bad thing. It's a thing.
There are cards in the deck that have an instant win condition. So there are certain things that, hey, the game ends when X happens, but there's also certain cards that says, hey, when you build this, the game ends immediately. And in some cases, the game just ends and you score. In other cases, the game ends and you win if you're the one that built that. And at first, I didn't like that. I was like, hey, that's not what the game is. But then when a couple of those came into play, that just changed everything. So there's one card in the deck, Dave, and I think you got it one of the times we played, and it's if you get one of each type of patron, and there's only 6, you win. And that changed how I was playing, because now I was okay, I'm not just playing, it doesn't matter how many points I've got if you finish that. And so hopefully everybody else gets on board that we can't let David get this. And then I had that card in one of the next games we played, and it totally changed it for me. I was playing totally differently. And right before I got that last patron, I literally would have got it on the next round. Pete comes in with this card I didn't even know existed. He's like, I'm just going to steal that from you. I'm like, come on, man. And now I shift from trying to get those to, oh my gosh, I can't let Pete get that now.
Yeah.
Right. And so that, I found that really fun, even though I was like, at first, that's not what the game is. And I was like, wow, this game is totally different.
You got a long memory.
And that game, you ended it before, because I would have picked up the pile and I would have won instantly.
Yeah, right.
So, by you ending the game when you did, you prevented me from winning outright.
Which really felt good.
Yeah.
But I still had something to do on my stack.
It felt good taking it from you, but I also felt bad. But.
And I also have a love-hate relationship with some of the special powers, because, again, the cards, some of them are instant win, but a lot of them give you some sort of special power or special ability. Some of them are just you, and some of them allow you to stop people from doing things to you, or to allow you to do things to people. And so maybe you build a palisade so that someone can't steal your cards anymore when they do the Legionnaire. I build that, and I think, I'm great. And next thing you know, Pete's like, okay, Legionnaire, Rome demands this. And I'm like, you can't take it from me. I've got the palisade. He's like, no, I've got the bridge, and so I can take yours anyway. I'm like, come on, man. And at the same time, you're feeling just frustrated. It's also just, to me, that was a fun part of the game, to think that I'm sitting there and even be taunting Pete. You can't have my stuff. He's like, yes, I can. I got a bridge, and here it comes. So
that was a little bit of a jam, though, if you don't play the second version that we played, where you're throwing all the cards in. If you can't get Legionnaire from other people, you're not. I feel like it's a little bit sticky, where you can't get the cards you need to build what you need to build. It's a lot more difficult if people have that.
Yeah, and that's why I think that variant that David talked about, what kind of game do you want to play? Do you want it to be tight, where you're struggling to get your stuff, or do you want things to be a little more available, maybe a quicker game? And that might decide whether you play with that variant or not.
Did you guys have a preference on what you liked better?
It depends which cards I had, because if it was something like
change the game midway.
Yeah, depends who I'm playing with.
I'm not going to say my preference.
I like the second one. It opened it up a little bit more. I think for first time playing, that's a little bit better way to play, a little more loose. But
definitely looser. Yeah. Easier to get done what you're trying to get.
Yeah, and so I would say as you progress, you could tighten it up.
Yeah.
That could play, though, into those overpowered cards, so you got to be aware of that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the second time when we play that variant, you have to be really aware of what cards you're throwing in, because I think I was hoarding cards for the most part that second game. I think I had all 6 jacks at
You
one
had
point.
my hand in here or something because I had nothing.
Because I was trying to strangle out people from doing things because the pool is so big.
Yeah,
at
you
one
got to be
point.
careful what you put in there, and someone else can all of a sudden easily take it back.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. And the last thing I had is there's a lot of player interaction. We've touched on that. There's like everything is player interaction here almost. So as opposed to Bruges where there's not much, this is just it's either a take that for the most part, but you're not playing solo in this game for sure.
I agree with that.
Anything about Glory to Rome that just makes you want to tear your toga to threads?
The graphic design is, I mean, not even just the art, which the art's not that great, but the graphic design to me on this is, I'm going to call it horrible. I don't think it matters which version you're playing. From what I can see, they're both bad. And I think that contributes to some of the confusion when you're playing, okay, which one's the pot, which one's the stockpile, and all that. To me, there's the way those boards are designed and the cards are designed, they're not helping themselves, in my opinion, with respect to the graphic design aspect of the game.
Well, and I think that for me is one of my points. Is it's sloppy when it's on the table. The player card is 3 times bigger than the card you're playing with, and then you got to put cards under it. It's the same thickness and material that you're playing the cards with, and it was chaos like on the table, which I don't generally mind, but the pool got messy, and then we were sorting the pool by colors. It was just like
And I think when the game is this complicated, you don't want to be having to deal with the other overhead of figuring out, okay, what is this trying to tell me? And I can't fit stuff. You need to be able to concentrate on what you're doing.
Yeah.
And this doesn't allow you to do that.
Yeah, you need to know what the cards do straight up. You know, you mentioned this before that you didn't realize what the card was that I had. And when you're playing on the table, you know, with 5 players and I'm looking across the table, I have no clue at what Daniela's got over there. And, you know, again, you know, we talked about, you know, table talk, you know, what do you have over there? What is that? The bridge where, you know, you can steal stuff. So that in combination of just the wording on the cards and, you know, knowing what those cards do, you really have to have a good grasp on it or you're just going to get hammered.
And we consulted the rule book a lot to figure out, okay, what does this power actually do?
Yeah,
And
we
how
were
to use it.
we were handling that you know, player aid back and forth or the rule book, you know, even just trying to figure out what one of the cards do because there is such an interaction, you know, how we talked about, you know, one card allows you to kind of trump another card and that card then can be trumped by something else, which I think is really a cool, unique design, but it adds to that complexity. I mean, I think I'd rather play Magic the Gathering. It might not be as complicated. I can teach you guys that easier than this, but that's one of the things. And that card flow to me, and again, maybe it just doesn't make sense. I did go online and I looked and I did see a little chart. I know I texted you guys that. I think if I would have had that ahead of time and knowing that really the only way for you to play a card from your hand is to actually draw it from the deck. Because there's really no other way to grab those cards and get them into your hand. I see them in the pile, and I'm like, yeah, I want that. I can't get it, you know. So I mean, there's some really neat designs, but I think it just ties me up too much.
Yeah, definitely more a difficult multi-card use like hand than Bruges than what we previously talked about for sure.
For me, architects versus craftsmen, I don't know why, eternally confusing, even though it's straightforward as all get out, but I don't know what it would take other than playing it often enough to keep straight, okay, which one pulls from your hand and which one from the stockpile, but how many times did I play one and say, oh, that's actually from the other, and vice versa. And thematically, architect versus craftsman doesn't help me understand, oh, it's coming from your hand, it's coming from your stockpile. There's just something about that every time I got to look, and we played it a lot, every time I got to look, what does the architect do, what does the craftsman do, which is which. And then the last thing I'll say is there's obviously a lot going on in this game. I feel like if you're not putting stuff in your vault, you're not going to win unless you have one of those instant win conditions. Then maybe so. Your vault can only be so big, so you got to be doing other things to be able to make that vault big enough. So there's that. But maybe there's not a single path to victory, but I feel like ignoring your vault is a pretty strong path to defeat.
Yes, I would say so for the most part.
Yeah, the big thing I really don't enjoy about this game is it's got just a little bit too much conflict for me. Just the games that I like to play, I don't mind some interaction, but this is all out bring a knife to the fight because that's what it's going to be.
It's ancient Rome, man.
You're not making any friends here. That, you know, this might be close to diplomacy. I don't know. I haven't played that one yet, but it's just a little too much for me. I think. and I'm just going to throw this out here because I don't know if any of the other listeners, if you do want to try a game like this, I believe Fort is very similar, but it's kids in a playground, and it has some of the same mechanics where instead of you having patrons, you actually have lookouts, and you have your play area and you have those cards, but there's cards out in front of you that you can also share. So I think that's I would call that a nicer version. If you think you might want to even try this game, go out and buy it. I think it's only like $30 or something like that.
Cool. All right, well, let's take Glory to Rome into the collector's corner. David, should we seek out a merchant to put Glory to Rome into our vaults?
So if you were lucky enough to buy this game back in 2005, you made some good money on this game, because right now this game is probably one of the highest price games that I have in my collection. I have both what we call the English 1.5 edition, which is the edition that we played and you'll see pictures of, and then there's also a black box edition, which is the sought and coveted box. You've probably seen a picture of it if you play board games. It's kind of like this mythical box just because of all the lore that kind of goes around this game.
And David does not trust us with the black box version.
Well, my black box version isn't fully opened either. So just to kind of give perspective right now, if you want to go online and buy the English 1.5 edition, which comes in this plastic clamshell, you'll kind of look at the case and you're like, really? This is what the game comes in? But it's going between $150 to $250 on eBay or on Board Game Geek. You can find it sometimes, if you're lucky enough, for around $100 if somebody's willing to sell you it. And I have seen copies go for that. I know I bought mine for around $85 from a guy. So I know that you can find it for that. But if you want to buy the black box version, which is the more sought after, the collectible version, right now it's going anywhere between $350 to $600 online. And I say that conservatively because if you go on eBay, a lot of times you'll see a game price. Somebody will price a game at like $1,000 and you'll be like, well, they never get it, right? Because everybody's like, well, what's the sell price? What's the last price sold? Well, I will say that on June 15th of this year, black box edition of this went for $1,000 on eBay. Sold. So, wow. And that was unopened, but you can kind of see the value. And I do have an unopened copy, so I liked where the price was going with that. But it's more rare because not a lot of these games are coming out, obviously, and I don't think it'll ever get reprinted because of all the conflict. If you want to research this story further, just type in Glory to Rome, and you can kind of find the backstory. But if you're lucky enough, you can find a black box version around $300. I saw somebody selling it in our local area for $325 on Facebook Marketplace. So there are people that are willing to let it go, but that's kind of where it's at. So
it's good news for your daughter. She gets to go to college.
Yeah, right. I'm not selling that for her.
I think maybe that the backstory you referred to is maybe why it's so valuable, because people know it's not coming out.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Which is a shame, because I think this is one that could be quite popular, especially in certain circles, even if nothing else for the lore. Like, oh my gosh, they're printing it again. This could be the... we talked earlier about Stefan Feld and the price of his games. They could pull a lot of cash in if they could get their stuff together.
Listen, with the graphics the way they are, anybody could print this on a copier.
People there are
a lot of people that do that.
A lot of print and play
out there. Yeah, there's some print and plays that you can do.
I'm about to make me some money.
I saw somebody do their own print and play version, and it sold for $200 online.
Stop.
Yeah.
See, and they shouldn't be allowed to do that.
Copy.
Yeah, they shouldn't be allowed to do that. But
it was super nice.
So this is a game. We talked about Bruges, and I said I wouldn't spend that kind of money. I don't know that I would spend that kind of money here either, but I can see easier spending it on something like this. I think it's a much better game. I think if you have the right group, I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't have the right group to do it unless we were playing it all the time here, which, based on what you just heard, it'd be a 2-player game. Yeah.
All right, no more final thoughts from you, Chris. Yeah, all right, so before we lay the final foundation, David, you just told us a ton of information about the collectors and the editions of this. How about just any final thoughts on the game overall?
I mean, to me, this game is kind of right at my wheelhouse. It gets better as you play, but like kind of Pete was alluding to, the more you get to know the cards, the more this game starts to really click, because you're paying attention to what other people have, and if it comes naturally to you, you kind of know and gravitate toward what people might be building towards just by what they're putting out. But it tends to have a lot of plays in this game, and so if you're not willing to invest the time, this game's going to always be rough for you, I think. Mm-hmm. Going over to Pete.
Yeah, sleeves At the
yeah,
cost
it's
of this,
sleeved.
at the cost of this game, you're sleeve it up, and definitely no drinks on the table during the game. It's really basically cards and your player board, so there's really not a lot to bling out or anything like that. The value of the game is really where that is. Just protect it would be what I would say.
All right, skipping Chris. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I'm thinking I can see if David ever brought his black box out, would be in one of those glove boxes like people handle the infectious diseases with. Like, you may not touch the cards, you may not breathe on them. So, no, in all seriousness, I really enjoyed this game. The first time we played it, I was confused as all get out. I think the last time we played, I might have been partially confused too with okay, what's going on here? But when we played that first time even, and I was like, I don't really know what happened there. I can't wait till I play this again.
Yeah.
Right? It was just really interesting. A lot of complication there, but you just know, okay, there's a really, really good game in there. I just got to get my head around.
Yeah,
what it is,
you're a puzzly person enough that you want to figure out the game. So I think that's good. And I don't disagree. I will say, from my point of view, if you're going to play this game, I think you need to have it for a game night and play a number of rounds with it and keep it going. But as far as anybody new playing this game, play the second way that we played it if you're interested in it and you do like that multi-use card game only. As far as being new to the gaming community, I don't recommend this game, not at all. And it's not because it's not fun or anything like that. You've heard everybody's different opinion here. You can take it for what it is, but there's something about it that is very complicated. Or take the time to review the cards, look at them in advance, and you might have a little bit more of an understanding of the game. Well, it looks like the Coliseum just finished construction, so let's head down that way for today's Battle of the Funnest.
All right, everyone, the moment of truth has arrived. It's time to separate the men from the boys, or more appropriately, the games from the toys. We're pitting these games head-to-head against each other in the ultimate face-off. In one corner, weighing in at 2.75 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.4. Found floating in the canal currents of beautiful Belgium, increasing its reputation one bad roll at a time. This generation's giant generator of gold guilders, the thwarter of threats, the preventer of plagues, the maestro of majorities. That's a house of a different color, Bruges. In the other corner, weighing in at 2.93 out of 5 with an overall BGG rating of 7.5. Rising from the ashes in 64 AD, sold to Caesar with a tempting teaser, able to turn rubble into marble like a magic marvel, the architect of entertainment, the legendary legionary, the proudest patron of this entire nation, so good we know what you're really wearing under that toga. Glory to Rome! And now let's find out how we decide to play this out in our Battle of the Funnest Showdown. All right, team, you remember how this works. We're going to evaluate these games head-to-head in 5 different categories: theme and production, mechanisms, value for your time, replayability, and the fun factor. We'll each choose which game we think outdoes the other in each category. The game that gets the most votes wins the category, and the game that wins the most categories takes the prize in our Battle of the Funnest. So let's let the rat out of the bag, starting with theme and production. Daniela.
All right, so for theme and production, I'm going to go with Bruges. It's nicer on the table. It is easier. I like the layout of the cards better. I like the design on the cards better. It just overall feels a lot nicer to me. David.
Yeah, I'm going to ditto that comment. I'm also going with Bruges on this one. I just can't get over the bad artwork on Glory to Rome, but maybe that's what makes it famous. But to me, I just can't get over it. Bruges is definitely a better production. I do really like the cards. I like looking at the people's faces. They're all different, and it's kind of unique. Going over to Pete.
Yeah, production and theme, Bruges all the way. There's nothing you guys didn't already say. I mean, the downside is with Glory to Rome. We talked about it. I just, the cards are not appealing to me. They just do things, and I don't think they do them very well. Chris?
Yeah, I really don't like the theme in Bruges. I'm not even sure what the theme is in Bruges. I like the theme in Glory to Rome, but the art, as we've already mentioned, the production, the graphic design is just so bad in Glory to Rome that Bruges wins by default for me as well. So I'm giving my support to Bruges on this one. 4-0, Bruges sweeps the category in theme and production. The next category is mechanisms. David, let's start with you.
This one was a tough one for me. I go back and forth, but at the end of the day, who can I play more? Like, which game can I play more and easily teach? Because that's what I'm doing a lot of. And so for me, I just like Bruges' mechanic. It's nice and fast. You know, the mechanic is very easy. Here's a card. Here's your 5 options. Go do what you want to do. Sometimes it has a little AP, but the concept itself, I just think, is way cleaner. So I'm going with that. It doesn't have as much depth, but it is cleaner, and it plays, in my opinion, a little bit better on that front. I'm going to go over to Daniela.
Yeah, I think the cleaner is key there, David. I think I'm going to go with Bruges as well, just for the overall. Again, I agree with everything you're saying. Who am I playing this with? Who am I teaching this to? And is it going to come out in the complications of it all? I just think it's a little more streamlined with Bruges. Pete.
Yeah, the game flows real well. Bruges all the way. I just, again, don't know the order on which I'm doing things in Glory to Rome. Bruges mechanisms, I like the dice rolling part of it. I like drafting the different cards or pulling the cards from the deck. Just a much better game. Chris?
Yeah, I'm going to rock the boat a little bit here. I'm going with Glory to Rome. I think, yeah, Bruges is pretty simple. I don't know that it's doing anything all that unique. For me, when I look at unique mechanisms, Glory to Rome blows it out of the water. I think it's a totally different game than what I'm used to. I have a lot of fun playing it. That mechanism speaks to me. I'm going with Glory to Rome. Doesn't matter because it's 3-1. Bruges takes mechanisms as well, and that they take a 2-0 lead overall. Now we go to value for your time. I'm going to start this one. This is always an interesting one for me. Bruges is actually shorter, I think, on average when we've played it than Glory to Rome. A lot of that, I think, is because we're sitting there pounding our head on the table like, what can I do? And I made a mistake. But value for your time also for me is, okay, I'm spending this much time. How do I feel about that? I'm going to go with Glory to Rome because if I'm going to choose what do I want to spend my time doing for what is roughly the same amount of time, I'm definitely going Glory to Rome. I'll kick it back to Pete.
I'm on the opposite side of that fence there. Bruges, for me, it's when I'm playing the game, I just feel like I'm doing something. In Glory to Rome, I'm at the whim of... That's just the way it feels to me. I don't feel like I have much control over my events that I'm doing. Daniela, what are your thoughts?
So for value for a time, I actually thought Glory to Rome went faster than Bruges. I could be totally wrong. I'd have to go back and look at the gameplays on it. But I'm going to actually go with Glory to Rome on this because I think after a certain time, when you do understand the game, I like the quickness of it. I like the interaction. I like the fast-paced circle. I don't know how many times we said to each other, whose turn is it? Whose turn is it? Where are we at? Where are we at? What are we doing? People were trying to hop each other as we're playing it. I just think for my time, I liked when it finally clicked, this game moved at a pace that I more or less appreciate. David.
You know, I think value for time, a lot of times I'm asking myself, how fast does it play for what experience I get? But in this case, I know we have replayability coming, but for me, you know, value for my time is the more time I put into Glory to Rome, the more I get out of it. You know, when I put more time into Bruges, even though it is my summer fling and I do really like it, I'm just not getting as much out of it. Like kind of Chris said, I think I've seen a lot of it. You know, I know that's a little bit replayability, but for value for my time, the more time I put in, I'll have to give it to Glory to Rome, just by a hair, though.
All right, so Glory to Rome, 3-1 over Bruges, so value of your time goes to Glory to Rome. All right, we'll go to replayability, and Pete, we'll start with you, so you can say, I like Bruges better.
You know what I'm going to say. This one is actually a little tough for me, but I am going to go with Bruges. Glory to Rome, I think there's a lot there. But I also think that there's a couple ways to win, and you're going for those throats. You know, you're trying to. I got this, and I'm going to try to play it, and people are going to try to stop you. Replayability for me. I mean, are there different things I can explore? I feel like when I'm playing Bruges, it's very subtle on the action and the cards that I'm doing, and those combinations aren't as I would say as bold as they are in Glory to Rome. So Bruges is going to take it for me. David.
Another tough one, but for me, I'm going to have to go Glory to Rome on this. I think there is a little bit more replayability as you keep on kind of going down its multiple paths. A lot of ways it reminds me of a game, Cosmic Encounters. It takes a lot from a lot of different games, I could say, but Cosmic Encounters is one of the games I do not like. But I like the fact that like there are cards that trump other cards. So, you know, you can never be too confident, even at the cards that you play, because there's probably a card out there that can come in and somehow sneak and hit that card off. And I do like the player interaction. I think that's what, for me, makes this game a little bit better than Bruges, just because I do feel with Bruges there isn't as much player interaction, and I do like player interaction. So for that reason, even though it's a little dirty, I'm going with Glory to Rome on this one. I'm kicking it over to Chris.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Glory to Rome on this as well. I think as we play that more and we see, oh, look at what this special power is here and what it does, that's really interesting to me. I feel like Bruges, yeah, you might get different cards. It's still the same experience for me. Every time we played Glory to Rome, I felt like it was different. That was exciting to me. Glory to Rome it is. Daniela, we have a tie, or what are you going to do here?
So replayability, I'm going to go with Glory to Rome for the simple fact that I do feel when we were playing Bruges, I was kind of scratching my head of why it was one of David's flings. And I think it just didn't wow me in the sense that we played the game, we played the expansion. I liked the expansion. I thought it moved a lot better. But I think in Glory to Rome with the replayability, there is a bunch of different ways. There's something about it that I think every single time you play it could be different. Now, I don't know that for fact. It could be samey as we play it 4 or 5 times in a row. I'm not positive on that. But at this point in the plays, I'm going with Glory to Rome.
All right, so Glory to Rome storms back 3-1 again on replayability. It's now 2-2 overall. All right, the final category is the fun factor. I'm going to start this one off. You've heard me voting for Glory to Rome every time. That's why I'm starting off, because I want to give Glory to Rome an advantage or a lead here, and we'll see what happens.
Who's paying you?
Those guys are from MIT. They can probably afford it. I feel like, again, when I was playing Bruges, I was okay, but I was having a lot more fun playing Glory to Rome. I mentioned earlier that, when those certain cards come out, all of a sudden, hey, that game just changed. When Pete comes in, swoops in, takes that card, hurts for a little bit, and then I look back on it and say, that was pretty fun moment. That was a memorable moment that I can remember back, and I probably will for quite some time. So Glory to Rome for me. I am going to David.
Tough one for me. I like to measure fun factor a lot of times by what I can remember from the games that I've played. And I've had a lot of good experiences with both of these games. A lot of shouting at the table with both of these games when different things happen. And so I guess just who shouts loudest? I guess that's where I come at it with. And again, by a hair's breadth, I can't even believe I'm saying it because it's not what I thought I would say. But I'm going with Glory to Rome on this one. Just the fact that you get to yell Glory to Rome at people when you don't have cards. I like that. It's mean, but I don't really like mean games, but for some reason I like this one. Every time I look over and see Pete screwing Chris and I can't even affect Chris, I love it. To me, it just takes the cake. I do like the meanness. It kind of cuts through. I'm going to send this one over to Pete.
Yeah, you guys know what I've been talking about all along, but I'm actually going to side with you guys on this one with fun. As much as I dislike this game, just the chaos and the craziness that happens, it can really be fun as long as you're ready for that. We talked about it a little bit, that you got to be prepared to come for that knife fight. If you are, you're going to have a good time trying to get at each other's throats. So fun factor, that's for me. Daniela, are we sweeping it?
We are sweeping it. I'm going to say Glory to Rome because for the simple fact that I like the take that games when you find out what it is. As you stated, Pete, the chaos, kind of all the confusion. Dave is just sitting in the corner laughing every time Chris is getting screwed. Like, it's fun to watch it play out in all seriousness. And I think that's what makes game night for me fun, is just everybody laughing at the things and loving the things that they like about a game really come to surface.
All right, so 4-0. Glory to Rome wins fun factor. So when we first started this Battle of the Funnest, Rome was on fire, and it looked like it was down for the count, but it managed to rebuild itself up and take it. So with a score of 3-2, Glory to Rome rises from the rubble and wins today's Battle of the Funnest.
Glory to Rome!
Well, friends, that brings us to the end of another episode of the Fifth Meeple Board Game Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the hand we dealt you today, and we'd love to hear your opinions on these games or the show in general. Send us an email at thefifthmeeple@gmail.com, visit us at thefifthmeeple.com website, or hit us up on social media. Better yet, we'd love it if you'd leave us a review, especially on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. And if you do, we just might read one of your reviews on a future show. As always, thank you so much for listening, and until next time, may all your choices be wise one. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
See ya.
All right, so anything about Glory to Rome that just makes you want to tear your yoga into threads?
It's not your yoga.
It's a toga.
Sit down already. Make sure you don't interrupt me.
Rome's your side piece. Doing our best to restore glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
That was awesome. Thanks, guys.
Terrible.
I wasn't watching.
I wasn't watching it.
Then we'll do our best to bring glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Rome.
Let me do that again. Hold on.
Glory to Rome.
Glory to Chris. It only works when I do it, Chris.
I got it.